Tell us what you think. Channel M, everywhere.
Oh, I'd love to go there.
Places to go with GMPTE. Sponsors I Love Manchester.
Welcome to I Love Manchester, our guide to the successes and secrets of our city. Today I'm in the borough of Stockport, an area that's steeped in history, with its medieval street patterns, examples of Victorian, Regency, Georgian and fine Tudor buildings. It's an area with real character.
I love Stockport. There's probably been quite a few opportunities where I could have moved out of Stockport, come to the city. Especially when I moved out of home about 2 years ago, I decided to buy my house there. It's near to the M60, my mum. Yeah. It's near to the airport. You can be at Manchester Airport in 10 minutes. Everybody knows you and it's just got a really nice atmosphere. You can walk down the road and people will stop and say hello. It's a nice feeling about it.
I had some speaking at the town hall once. And you forget, you go inside the town hall and you think it's going to be some poxy little place, and it's an amazing building. I think there's something really good about it, and it's distinctly different from Manchester and quite special in that regard, I think.
Whilst other towns in the UK have experienced redevelopment and clearance, Stockport Centre has certainly managed to retain much of its history. The town is built on the slopes of a narrow gorge that was formed where the River Tame and the Goyt come together to form the River Mersey, which then flows westward some miles to the Irish Sea, giving the town its unique and picturesque appearance. Even the prominent landmarks of Stockport set it apart from any other area. The town hall with its striking white limestone facade, the futuristic blue glass pyramid and the impressive railway viaduct. The viaduct is Western Europe's biggest brick structure and an amazing feat of Victorian engineering. It took 600 workers and an incredible 11 million bricks to build, and if laid end to end, the bricks would stretch 1,500 miles. The viaduct enabled travellers from Stockport to reach London, and the artist L.S. Lowry was an admirer of the viaduct too, depicting its 27 arches in a number of his works.
To go over the viaduct and see what you see from that view, it's one of the things that shows you that Stockport's a bit distinct.
But the historical centre of Stockport is the marketplace. The marketplace is actually situated on a 240 million year old red sandstone cliff that's been the scene of human activity since the Stone Age. It once overlooked and guarded a ford across the River Mersey in Roman times, and Roman artefacts have been found in the borough, but whether Roman fortifications or settlements have ever existed here, no one actually knows. But it's certainly very busy now. It came to be a marketplace when Stockport was granted its market charter in 1260 and has operated on this site for the last 750 years, surviving world wars, the plague and the Industrial Revolution. It remains one of the only traditional street markets in the northwest. It also boasts the freshest produce that Stockport has to offer, and apparently, allegedly, many years ago, this area was where the last wife to be sold in England was purchased, and also eerily it's where public executions were carried out. The stretch neck, the whipping post and the stocks and the dungeon were all well known in this area. But I think I'll stick to the bananas. How much for your bananas, please? 86p. And a complete bargain as well. But that's not all. Also found here is one of the few survivors of a medieval merchant's townhouse. Recently part of a massive restoration project, the Staircase House is one of Stockport's newest tourist attractions. The reason it's called the Staircase House is because of this very rare 17th century cage newel staircase. And when it was designed, these upright posts here would have run right from the ground right up to the roof, creating an enclosed cage-like space. Along the way you will pass through period rooms in which the fascinating stories when it was owned by the Shallcross family unfold on a state-of-the-art studio guide. Travel through time from 1460 to World War II when the house was last inhabited. You are invited to smell, touch and listen in this fully interactive attraction for some hands-on history.
From around 1605 to 1730, the house was inhabited by a family called the Shawcross family. They were members of the landed gentry, so they leased and owned property in and around the area. Staircase House was actually their townhouse. They had their main home was Shawcross Hall in Derbyshire. Staircase House was where they would have done their liaising within the town, and it was the dower house of Mary Shawcross.
This is no doubt where the Shawcross family, the very wealthy Shawcross family, would have spent their evenings. Very refined and a fine pianist.
The fire took place in 1995. It really did devastate the house, but what it did also do was raise awareness of Staircase House to the public, and it became concerned that the house should be restored and that the house did have great historical significance. It was the driving force behind the restoration. Specialists were brought in so that there's furniture replicas that are very accurate to how they would have been and actually feel like what it would have been like to live in the house.
Many of the wealthy merchants in this area who would have owned a house like this would have been likely to have made money from textiles during the Industrial Revolution. Like many of the places we visited in this series, Greater Manchester played its part in the growth of the textile industry with its cotton.
And Stockport specialised in hat making.
To celebrate the town's achievements, Stockport Hat Works has its very own museum dedicated solely to hats. Holding everything from bowlers to trilbies and free to enter, this museum is well and truly top hat.
The Hat Museum as well in Stockport, just on the A6, just near to the old Garrick Theatre and the BSM Driving School.
But isn't that, I mean, that's just old hat, isn't it?
It's nice to see a bit of history at Stockport, you know. You tend not to go to Stockport, you tend to go further afield. You go to Manchester, you go to Style Mill, places like that, and dress up as an old woman. That's what we did at my school anyway.
And it's just part of this big mill, and they've converted all the other places around it into quite new posh flats inside.
It's free entry at the moment as well if you fancy going, I'll tell you.
Sue, you have a fantastic collection of hats here, enough to keep you going for a very long time, I think.
Yes, we have. We've got men's hats, ladies' hats, military hats, straw hats, all different colours, all different periods of hat, right up until today, when lots of young people tend to wear baseball caps.
And what hats was Stockport known for making?
We were known for making fur felt hats and policemen's hats. Stockport did all the police forces for all over the country.
And you do still hold a lot of the machinery and the process of making hats here, so shall we go and have a look?
Yes, we will. Yeah. So this is the cottage industry part of the hat making. A lot of farmers did this to supplement their income. So during the winter, when the farm was just taking over, they would then be making their hats. This is the planking kettle. This area here is where they would shrink the hoods down. We've got boiling water in here. It's also got vitriol in, sulfuric acid. But before that, to prepare the fur, to make it felt together better, they would rub mercury salts into the fur. And of course, everyone that then handled that had some form of mercury poisoning, and that's where we get the saying, mad as a hatter from.
So the term mad as a hatter originated here in Stockport?
Yes, it did.
Oh, right. It seemed the process of making hats was quite lengthy, so did all this introduction of machinery actually help shorten the process?
It was still a lengthy process, even with the machines. It takes about 6 weeks from bunny to brow, as we call it, and there's about 45 different processes for it to go through.
All for a hat?
Yes, just to make the hat.
So, all decked out in your trilby, where would have been the best place to go back in the 1930s in Stockport?
Very good.
Well, from the 1930s it would have been here at the Plaza. On a typical night out you'd have been entertained by jugglers, a magician, a comedian, all for between 3 and 10 pence.
I went to the Plaza in Stockport to watch Ken Dodd. I remember thinking that, you know, it's Ken Dodd, he's a bit of an older comedian, an old school comic, I'm not sure if I'd like it. No word of a lie, it's like about 4 hours long, non-stop gags, just amazing. The guy's just amazing.
Described as the most architecturally sophisticated public entertainment building ever to be built in Stockport, and unusually it's still intact and back to its original use as a super cinema and variety theatre.
It used to be a bingo hall in Stockport, and then they changed it, they converted it back to what it was. And it's the best thing they've done, because they have loads of shows there, loads of live acts and stuff, and theatre and things. It's great.
So Ted, this would be the place to go in the 1930s and 40s. No tellies.
Absolutely not.
Main form of entertainment was the theatre.
That's right. I mean, we opened in 1932. We were a super cinema, which meant that we were the ultimate in luxury in Stockport. Good, hard-working, working-class town that needed that little bit of luxury, and this provided it. 1,200 seats of ultimate pleasure watching the greatest talkie films that were on at the time. Not only was it a cinema, we also had variety theatre, so often you would have routines happening on stage, comedians of the day, showgirls, all that sort of thing, and family pantomimes.
And I imagine people would want to dress up to come here, wouldn't they?
Absolutely. Well, in the early days, of course, people really would have worn their Sunday best for coming to the cinema as it was, and then to the theatre when we have theatrical productions. And even now, there are occasions, certain shows, where people make that little bit of extra effort, but the great thing is in today's modern generation that you can wear anything you want to come to the cinema, to come to the theatre, and you have a nice relaxing environment with these fantastic surroundings.
And I know it was a bingo hall, but in the last 5 years it's been reconverted back to its original use.
That's right. Probably perversely, one of the best things that happened to the place was that Mecca Bingo came along and really saved it as it is. If it hadn't been for them, I'm sure that the plaza may have gone down the route that many large super cinemas actually went down of being bulldozed. But because they had it as a bingo hall, it preserved it. Then 5 years ago, a team of enthusiasts got together and decided they were going to save the plaza, and working in conjunction with Stockport Council, they saved the venue, and as you can see, they're doing a fantastic job day by day refurbishing it and bringing her back to her former glory.
And I noticed you also have a very grand organ taking centre stage.
It's marvellous, isn't it? We do have organ recitals, but also before many shows and always before the films, we have the organist, and we're probably one of those only venues that right at the end of the film we have the national anthem, as a rule, played on the organ with the old classics, not with the modern day films, but with the old classics. It really is like stepping back into yesteryear. It's fantastic.
And also be surrounded with the magnificent architecture here. I mean, how much work actually went into creating this
Tons
building?
and tons of work. About 10,000 tonnes of rock were hewed out of the cliffs directly behind us. So we were actually built right back into the cliff, which was why during the war we were actually seen as one of the very safest places to be during the various sort of air raids on Manchester and the surrounding area, because we were built into the cliff. So this was the safe place to be.
So, during the years of World War II, the plaza may have been the first destination for many, but for thousands, many hours were also spent in a darker, more fearful environment.
Took a girl on a date to the air raid shelter. She wasn't as keen as I was.
Places to go with JMPTE. Sponsors I Love Manchester.
Discover great quality and low prices at Mike Goldrick Blinds, a family business with 21 years experience. Take advantage of the Mike Goldrick guarantee. We guarantee to beat any price with offers like 4 vertical blinds for just £99, and we can fit your blinds within 48 hours, or they will be ready to collect within an hour. We promise a reliable service that you'll be telling your friends about. For our nearest showroom, call now on 0800 731 7365.
I'm trying to lose weight and to tone my body up.
Being a member here for 3 years, and I have lost 2.5 stone.
It's a good workout and it is express, it fits in with your life. So after doing a 9-hour shift, I know that I can just do half an hour and get quick results.
It's quick, it's friendly, it takes half an hour and that's it, you're done.
Now I like looking at myself in the mirror. I can't believe the difference.
I think everybody can manage half an hour at the gym.
If you want more information, visit www.ladiesworkoutexpress.com.
Tinker, tailor, soldier, sailor, retailer, receptionist, painter, pilot, osteopath, office manager, naturalist, nurse, musician, mudlogger, lexicographer, lawyer, janitor, judge, illustrator, IT, historian, hairdresser, geneticist, gardener, farmer, film director, economist, engineer, dentist, DJ, copywriter, chef, builder, biochemist, accountant.
If you're a teenager or a parent, then call Connections for free, impartial advice on careers and much more on 0845 603 4017.
To see the very latest from Manchester's fashion and beauty scene, glamorous events, top tips from the city style gurus, and a peek into the lives of Manchester's fashionistas, watch Style in the City tonight on Channel M.
Places to go with JMPTE. Sponsors I Love Manchester.
Wednesday night Wednesday night half price. I took her down. I won't say her name. And it was, we went round, she wasn't too impressed. I never saw her again for some reason, I don't know why.
On December 22nd in 1940, Manchester was subject to 48 hours of terror as the German Luftwaffe began their onslaught on Manchester in one of the fiercest raids during the Second World War. Many of the city's prominent landmarks, such as Manchester Cathedral, the Royal Exchange and the Free Trade Hall, were damaged, as well as over 100,000 homes. Through these dark days, however, Stockport was central to saving lives. Underneath the town, a labyrinth of tunnels was created. Today, it is now one of their most poignant tourist attractions and enables us to relive a part of Stockport's past.
It's weird to see, such a thing in Stockport. You wouldn't have thought it. You wouldn't have thought Stockport was a target, but when you look at the industry and stuff around here, yes it was. But it's enormous down there. They should make a big sort of laser quest out of it or something. That's what they should do.
This air raid shelter would have accommodated nearly 7,000 people a night, which means surely it would have been very cramped. And it was also one of the largest purpose-built World War II air raid shelters in the UK. Barbara, 7,000 people a night. How did they manage to fit in?
If you just have a quick look at the plan, you can see just how the extent of these particular shelters, and they had got benches, they had got beds, they had got lights, they'd got a small kitchen, and the main thing is there were 7 ways that the people could get in, and by sitting down or sleeping we could easily get 6,500 people at least in here.
It feels very cold down here.
Temperature wise it's always 10 degrees or 50 Fahrenheit, but you've got to get used to the dampness, and this is what people would see. And the benches are here, you would find a place, you would sit on it, the lights are here, and you would then just get the general atmosphere of it being damp.
So people would just sit here and wait
for the all clear.
Over, yes.
Wait for the all clear, that's what you did. And of course you'd start chatting to one another. You're all in the same boat, there is nothing you can do, you're just waiting for the sign that the emergency is over and waiting to go home. But yes, and in fact in the end it got to the stage where clusters of people would come to the same area each time, knowing that they would meet people that they knew. All of a sudden now you're seeing not just benches, you're seeing beds which were put in to accommodate these overnight stays, 3-tier bunk beds, mattresses and pillows provided. So really you came in here, you had your choice which you wanted to use.
Just hearing the audio going off now,
yes.
Imagine they were the sounds that you would have heard, the babies crying, people speaking. How did people get away from that? I imagine it was very noisy.
Very much so. In fact, it must have been, people did say they were noisy. They also said they smelt, which you could imagine. But if you came in here wanting a quiet night, you were recommended to go more towards the Petersgate end, where you could be guaranteed a better night's sleep. Here is where maybe all the young children came and the families.
And in terms of the conditions and the sanitation, how did people cope with that?
You cope with it. You were all in the same boat, whatever the situation was. You couldn't pinpoint a tunnel, that is not a smelly one, that is a clean one. You just couldn't do it. You were in an emergency situation outside, you just came, you were thankful to be safe.
And 7,000 people, I imagine, became very rowdy, so how were they kept in line?
You had wardens on duty, there were always 2 wardens, but of course if the sirens went and 7,000 people, more wardens came on duty. And what you must remember, they did have limited powers of arrest. So if you came in being rather abusive or drunk, there was a room where they could lock you away for the duration of the raid.
So there was no getting away from the wardens?
Certainly not. Their presence was known and was seen. They were very visible.
After discovering what lies beneath Stockport, on higher ground, remarkably, 50% of Stockport is made up of green space, and only a short ride out of the centre will bring you here to one of the town's award-winning green flag parks, Fernham Park. And it's easy to see why this park has been Grade 2 listed by the English Heritage Register of Historic Parks and Gardens. A recent £1.6 million lottery grant has restored this traditional Victorian park to its former glory. Malcolm, this is an absolutely stunning park that you have here.
Thank you.
And you're the park ranger here. I bet it takes some looking after.
Oh, there's always something to do, yeah. You know, planting new plants, pruning, sweeping, you name it, we do it, yeah.
How many acres is it?
It's 21 acres in total, so you know, it's quite a size.
It's Stockport's oldest park, but how long has it been here for?
It was first laid out in 1858, and it was done by means of what they called poor relief, and it was using people with very little income or no income, and it got this nickname Pinch Belly Park because they were always hungry.
And it was owned by Lord Vernon. Who was he?
The land was owned by Lord Vernon. He was a local mill owner. He donated the land to the local authority at that time, and it was developed as a pleasure ground, as it was known back then, for looking after his work people, and somewhere for them to go on their leisure time.
And in the 1800s, coming to a park was a main social gathering, the social event, wasn't it?
Very much so, yeah. Particularly on a weekend, they would have things like Tulip Sundays. The park would be a mass of tulips. They also had band concerts on a Sunday, and there would be anything up to 3,000 people here on a Sunday afternoon.
And today it's still used very much, isn't it?
Very much so. I mean, people have more leisure time now. They want to come out and have a coffee or just sit and take on board what's going on around them, somewhere peaceful.
Stockport's very own museum is based at Vernon Park and is also part of the Pure Innovations project, a project which supports people who are disabled and disadvantaged to learn new skills and move towards working in areas in catering, cleaning and horticulture.
Pure Innovations offers an alternative day service for adults with a learning disability. We offer real-life experiences for the world of work. This is one of the projects that we run here at the museum. The people who work here are supported by members of staff like myself to try and learn different tasks in the museum. They're mixing with the general public in the community. We have a lot of regular customers now that know everybody by their first names. A lot of people like to come in and use the tea rooms because there's great views of the surrounding area and the park. We like to call the tea rooms a brew with a view.
Stockport Museum may have a brew with a view, but just 15 minutes down the road there are indeed more impressive views you will find in the wealthy area of Bramhall.
Too posh, that's where all the posh people live. I was never posh enough for Bramhall.
Bramhall's nice. Bramhall's like Stockport's answer to Alderley Edge, isn't it, really? It's well-to-do. Everyone's nice. Everyone's happy around here because they've all got massive houses and top cars.
We used to go down there actually only because my mum was a doctor. We lived in Heaton, Norris, and if we were ever invited around to her partner's houses, you would always go out and these other doctors would be all living in Bramhall in massive 20-storey mansions. But nah, we were never posh enough for that.
Stockport's wealthiest and most exclusive suburb, with big houses and fast cars, this is where you'll find the in crowd. But for me, there is one house in Bramhall that beats them all.
We went there with school, and there's a ghost in there. And they tell you these ghost stories, don't they, about the ghost of Bramhall Hall.
I have seen Bramhall Hall. My family was big stately home people, but I don't remember much of it specifically. I know it was big and black and white, and I know that down the hill from it there was a big pond where we used to feed ducks and swans. And that's about it. My family, I swear we have been to every stately home in the Northwest. So if you mention it, I've been there.
Bramhall Hall dates back to the 14th century and it's been described as one of the best timber-framed mansions in the UK, and it's not difficult to see why. With 2 lakes, wonderful woodland, fantastic gardens, Bramhall Hall is set in beautiful surroundings. Guided tours to learn about the hall's 1,000 years of history are available. So Barbara, this hall has a lot of history to it, and I believe this is the oldest part.
Yes. Where we are standing now is the Great Hall, and it dates back to around 1370. You can see the old door here, which was used as an early form of security in those days. So if you had an enemy coming and who knocked on the door at night, he couldn't actually get through the main door. He would have to bend down, so he couldn't draw his sword out. And I mean, most houses had those in those days as a form of security.
So who lived here that would need such security? Were they very wealthy?
Well, I don't know about wealthy, but they were certainly very important people. It was the Davenport family. They were at one time the Grand Sergeants of Macclesfield Forest. And if you have a look here at the felons' heads, these used to be on the gateposts when the Davenport family lived here. And they served as a warning to people that they had the power of execution So if you'd done something wrong, you had to be careful. The Davenport family were very powerful. They could execute you. Right, well, here we are in the chapel. Now, the first mention of the chapel is in 1541 in William Davenport II's will. And the first recorded marriage to take place in here was another William Davenport. Actually, it was William Davenport VI, I think I'm right in saying. And he married at the age of 15 to a young lady, Frances Wilbrahim, I think her name was, of Woodhay, and she was only 11. Here we have the ballroom. You can see that the painted walls of the ballroom. We're very proud of our ballroom at Bramhall Hall. There's only one other place in the country where they have paintings of this quality. Now, these paintings date back to around 1500, and it was Charles Neville in 1883-84, late 1800s, who discovered or rediscovered the paintings underneath the panelling, and he in his own way renovated them, and so we've got them here today, and we're very pleased to have them thanks to Charles Neville.
Who may have painted these then?
In the 1500s, in medieval times, you had just itinerant artists who would wander around the country offering to paint your walls. And of course they were much cheaper than having tapestries. So they would just say, you know, would you like your ballroom painted? And the lord of the manor would say, yes, very nice. Could I have my walls done in this way? This is where the Victorian owner of the house, Charles Neville, used to entertain his male friends. You can see there's the billiard table in here, and they would smoke and drink and enjoy themselves. But perhaps the most notable thing is the fire surround. You can see this magnificent fireplace, beautifully carved.
It's the biggest fireplace I think I've ever seen, actually.
Yes, it is, isn't it? See, you could store things in here. I don't know quite what they'd have used, but probably their bottles of alcohol or their cigars or whatever.
So the Nevilles and Davenports of Stockport certainly knew how to live the high life in a house like this, and considering I'm in Bramhall, I think it'd be rude if I didn't join in and sample a taste of the high life for myself. And this is one way to do just that, and we'll finish off any day in Stockport in style. I could definitely get used to this. Cheers. Next week I head for what was the heart of medieval Manchester. Visit Manchester Cathedral, Cheetham School of Music, the iconic 21st century building The Urbis, and Manchester's 24-hour entertainment complex.